Hi, my name is Shaubi, and I was asked by our friend Sina to share my thoughts on Parashat Vayhi Yaakov. So, as we finish Sefer Bereshit, I think it's worth it to summarize and take a larger bird's eye view on what the book we just read is all about. Sefer Bereshit is a story about the single most important piece of God's creation, the human individual. It's particularly about the individual as an individual who is created with Serem Elohim, and about his potential and the way for him to crack that potential. However, God does not merely create the individual and then leave him to his own bidding. He provides him with guidelines and a support system, or a Serem or a Eitz Hayim, but he also leaves man with the freedom and choice and responsibility to develop that Selim and to perfect himself. It is only man's doing that can convert Eitz Hayim to Eitz Da'ath, forfeiting Emeth at the expense of his own humanly concocted conventions of good and bad. As we read in Echa, Mipi Elyon lo teseh hara'oth ve'atov. The development of the Selem and the attainment of individuation is the essence of being human. And that's what Bereshit, and in fact the whole Torah, is all about. The rest of Bereshit can be divided into two halves. First, we read about how the human species failed in the mission I just described, deteriorating into corruption and depravity, and prompting God to destroy the world and to start again. That was the story of the first half of Bereshit. The second half of Bereshit is about the formation of a family called Bet Israel, which ultimately develops into our nation, Am Yisrael. The story of that nation and its reception of the Torah is the topic of Sefer Shemot, and our Parasha, Parashat Vayhi Yaakov, is the point of Israel's transition from family to nation. The heart of our nation is the Torah, but there are certain values that our nation has that serve as the foundation upon which we are able to receive the Torah. The formation of a family whose foundation is those values is the story of the second half of Bereshit. The Avot serve as the archetypes of the Jewish nation, the model that we look back to when we think about ourselves and how to develop ourselves. We are a nation of prophets, and to be a prophet is to primarily look deep into our mind and soul to understand it and to develop it. That is the emphasis on the Serem Elohim that I began with. That kind of internal work is really difficult and takes a lot of effort. It also takes a lot of time being with oneself and not being bogged down by the conventionalities and expectations thrusted on us by society. The Avot understood this. That is partly why they were all shepherds, which gives the space and time to do such internal development. It's also partly why Chachamim describe the Avot as the ones who invent the notion of tefillah, right? Of Avraham inventing Shaharit, Yitzhak, Mincha, and Yaakov, Arvit. It's also why Avraham leaves his home to go to a land that he doesn't know, but is promised that his descendants will inherit. So, the issue of this land, right? So, this land of Eretz Israel is a key part to this individual mission, right? The mission of the individual, but on the national level. When you have a nation whose culture it is to cultivate the individual mind, and you give that nation that is run by a law which is sovereign and provides freedom under the law, right, known as Cherut, when you have all of that, so then you have a recipe for creating the most perfect society possible, a Mamlechet Kohanim and a Goy Kadosh, This is why Yitzhak did not leave the land of Israel. And it is also why Yaakov was so afraid of leaving it, both when he ran away from Esav, and also in our parasha when he goes to meet Yosef, right? Twice when he leaves. When in our parasha, when Yaakov is afraid to leave to go to Egypt, right? The danger of Egypt is that of losing our culture. It's the same danger that God warns us about when we are about to conquer the land and destroy the idolatrous nations living there. So, right, and the reason we need to destroy them is that we do not adopt their ways. Right, we are to live in the land of Israel as our own nation. Right, hen am levadad yishkon uvagoyim lo yithashav. Nevertheless, God felt it was necessary for us to taste the bitterness of slavery or of avdut, and to understand, in order so that we understand the sweetness of freedom of Herut. Still, Yaakov is worried about the dangers of Egypt, but God calms him down and says to him, Anochi ha'el Elohe avicha, אל תירא מרדה מצרימה, כי לרוי גדול אשימך שם. אנוכי ארד עמך מצרימה, ואנוכי עלך רם עלו. Right, I'm the God of your father, right, the one to whom I said that you will inherit this land. And don't worry about going down to Egypt, because I will make you there into a great nation. And I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you back. Yaakov subsequently makes Yosef swear to it that he will bring him back to Israel to be buried there. And likewise, Yosef, at the end of our parasha, also understands that the future of our nation is in the land of Israel, where we will be free to be a nation of prophets. And so he says to his brothers, Anochi meth ve'Elohim pakod yifkod etchem ve'ela etchem min ha'aretz hazot el ha'aretz asher nishba'a le'Avraham li'Yitzchak u'Yaakov. I am now dying, but God will remember you and bring you back from this land of Egypt to the land that he promised to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Right? This notion of Eretz Israel and the importance of the land is so that we can live as our own sovereign nation, where we are able to create a culture, right, free from the slavery of external societies, right? So we can cultivate our own culture, which advances the development of the individual and his mind and soul. So we all merit, first of all, to be able to do that on the individual level, and then, of course, do that also on the national level. Shir Shabbat Shalom.